Emmerdale tease that the shadow of a hidden crime continues to hang heavily over the village. The whispers around John Sugden, his measured tone, clean appearance, and seemingly unimpeachable life, mask something darker, something sinister beneath. Ever since that night, ever since the blood washed down into the soil, he hasn't truly slept. The weight of what he's done gnaws at him in the quiet hours. But John isn't the only one suffering. His secrets have ripples. The townspeople go about their lives unaware, yet not untouched. Robert, for one, cannot let it go. He has pieced together more than just coincidence. In the episodes leading up to this, Robert uncovered inconsistencies in John's story, suspicious movements, timelines that didn't match. He followed the scent like a bloodhound, driven by more than justice, perhaps even vengeance. The death wasn't random. Robert felt it in his bones. He presented his findings to the local police. Documents, photographs, timestamps, witness accounts. All of it should have been enough. But it wasn't. John had an alibi, airtight and backed by someone respected in town. The alibi was a masterstroke. The truth, no matter how close Robert came, seemed just beyond reach. And worse, Robert's obsession painted him as unstable. Owen's brother entered the frame around this time. A quiet man, but observant. He warned Robert, "Stop digging, or there will be consequences." Robert, stubborn as ever, ignored him. He pressed further. That's when John started tracking him. He wasn't the type to confront, not directly. But surveillance. Intimidation. Quiet threats. Those were well within his wheelhouse. Robert's confrontation with Steve proved a turning point. Steve, once thought of as a possible ally, turned out to be a disappointment. When Robert accused John again, Steve didn't rise to support him. Instead, he struck Robert, both physically and emotionally. The slap was more than pain. It was betrayal. Robert began to see that Steve, too, had secrets. Maybe not the same kind of blood-stained ones John carried, but secrets nonetheless. Steve had once promised to protect the truth, to help expose injustice. But when the moment came, he shrank. It wasn't loyalty to John, it was fear. Fear of what would unravel if the truth came to light. Desperation mounted. Robert's search became reckless. That's when DC Cole stepped in. She was blunt, dismissive at first. She told Robert to leave the investigation to professionals. But her tone shifted when she realized the depth of Robert's research. Still, she couldn't act without more. And more was exactly what Robert didn't have. All the while, John's life seemed to continue unblemished. He smiled at the market. He helped the elderly cross the street. He volunteered at the youth center. But at night, the walls closed in. He'd hear things, footsteps that weren't there, voices carried on the wind. The guilt was like a constant undertone in every moment. Robert, despite the warnings, didn't stop. His last hope was finding the witness he believed had fled town after the murder. Someone had seen something, a figure near the scene, a voice in the darkness. But tracking them proved harder than he imagined. John, on the other hand, was growing bolder. With Robert stumbling and the authorities unconvinced, he saw an opening. He began to manipulate public opinion, suggesting that Robert was suffering from stress, that his grief had turned into obsession. And the village, slowly, started to believe him. Robert's credibility was cracking. The tension between the two reached a fever pitch. Every glance across the pub, every awkward silence in shared company, charged. Yet, neither made a decisive move. The truth still hung in the balance. And all it would take was one piece, one undeniable proof, to bring the whole lie crashing down. But that proof, for now, remained elusive. hidden behind a well-crafted mask, a village's complacency, and a killer's cunning. The air in Emmerdale remained thick with unspoken truths and buried danger. John Sugden's ability to walk freely around the village was a bitter reminder to Robert that justice wasn't always swift nor fair. Though humiliated and isolated, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that something, somewhere, had slipped. And that sliver of doubt would soon become a weapon. Following D.C. Cole's warning, Robert kept his head down outwardly, but in secret, he doubled down. He pored over everything again: witness statements, traffic camera positions, time logs from the night of the murder. His flat turned into a conspiracy board, strings and pins and notes covering entire walls. He was alone in this. Steve had made that painfully clear. Yet Robert had never relied on anyone to finish what he started. Meanwhile, John grew increasingly paranoid. His mornings started with checking who lingered outside, and his evenings ended with tracking Robert's movements from a distance. Despite the smug calm he showed in public, he was unraveling. It wasn't just Robert's persistence. It was the guilt clawing beneath his skin, reminding him that the past was never truly buried. The more he tried to convince himself he was safe, the more the nightmares returned: visions of blood, the lifeless eyes, and his trembling hands. When Owen caught wind that John had approached Steve again, he stormed into John's workshop late at night. The confrontation was tense. Owen made it clear that dragging Steve deeper into this would not be tolerated. "You said you'd handle it quietly," Owen spat, shoving John against the wall. "If Robert disappears, people will ask questions. And if they dig too deep, they'll find us all." John, breathless, nodded. But he was already crafting another plan, one that didn't involve Owen, Robert, or Steve. If he wanted to survive this, he'd have to take control of the narrative. The next day, Robert received an anonymous message slipped under his door. No signature, just a line: "Check the dashcam footage from Mill Lane." It was vague, but enough to ignite hope. Robert tracked down a delivery driver, who often passed through Mill Lane. After a few persuasive words, and a promise of anonymity, the man handed over a backup copy from that night. Hours later, Robert sat frozen in front of his laptop. The footage was grainy, but it was there: John's car parked suspiciously on the side of the road, engine running, lights off. More damning was the timestamp. It directly contradicted his alibi. Robert now had more than speculation. He had visual proof. But the question was, would anyone believe him this time? He brought the footage to D.C. Cole the next morning. She remained cautious, even skeptical, but she agreed to open a reinvestigation discreetly. "No promises, Mr. Sugden," she warned. "And if this is doctored?" "It's not," Robert cut in. "Just watch it." Back in the village, John sensed the shift. Robert's eyes carried the dangerous spark of someone who'd found a weapon. John confronted Steve again, this time with anger and desperation. "You told me you'd keep him quiet." Steve, looking more tired than ever, leaned against the bar at the Woolpack. "And you told me you had a solid alibi." "I can't cover your lies forever, John." The silence between them deepened. Steve knew something was coming. Maybe not tomorrow. But the walls were closing in. Owen, too, began to unravel. His loyalty to John was never built on friendship, but on mutual destruction. If John went down, so would he. So he began to distance himself. Quietly. He deleted messages. He wiped old call logs. And then, he visited D.C. Cole himself, cloaked in the guise of concerned citizenry. "You should take a closer look at John," he said. "Something doesn't add up." Moira, who had been loosely observing from afar, began to sense the brewing storm. She remembered the odd looks between Steve and Owen, the tension in the air whenever John entered the pub. Something dark was circling. The police raided John's garage 1 week later. They didn't find a smoking gun, but they took his phone, hard drives, records. And they found the hammer, cleaned, yes, but trace evidence could be enough. John was brought in for questioning. Inside the cold, grey room, DC Cole laid out the footage. She didn't accuse him. Not yet. She waited. Watched. John's calm demeanor cracked as the seconds ticked by. Sweat gathered at his temples. I already gave you my statement, he said, voice hoarse. That was before we saw this, she replied, nodding to the footage. John shifted, but said nothing. After 2 hours, they let him go. Not arrested, yet, but clearly on the radar. Outside, Robert was waiting. John stared at him as though seeing a ghost. Robert offered a bitter smile. This isn't over, John said. Robert replied, no. It's only just beginning. In the days that followed, Emmerdale buzzed with whispers. John's shop lost clients. People gave him wide berth. Steve no longer took his calls. Owen had vanished to Leeds. Moira kept her distance, but watched with interest. One night, someone broke into Robert's flat. Nothing stolen, but the footage was gone. Only the original USB remained with DC Cole. Robert knew then, this wouldn't end without someone going too far. But he wasn't afraid anymore. Because now he had leverage. And this time, he wasn't letting go.